Oh boy, Hot D is really living up to that acronym in this episode. This is going to be a fun one.
Let's talk about sex.
The core of this episode centers around the theme of marriage, sexuality, and power. The episode showcases how sex can be used as a status of power and control in a relationship between both genders, and how one tries to break against that trend.
Were I born a man, I could bear Tim if I wanted. I could father a dozen bastards, and no one in your court would blink an eye.
You're right. But you were born a woman.
I loved how the episode tackled the question on multiple fronts and showed us contrasting examples and how it's even an awakening for Rhaenyra. If you compare Rhaenyra to Alicent, both have a bit of an interesting time in this episode. This royal lifestyle for Alicent has slowly turned into a nightmare, and it's also another representation for Rhaenyra of what awaits her down the line, and that's something she doesn't want. She fears the idea of marriage and sex, as she doesn't want to be someone who just pushes out babies, or worse, die during childbirth.
Valusut, idina de mariusut vedila sagan costas. Abrasut vegitsus.
Pegni erixos jailan nike nuho praedasmo brasilio dele uno go daratex.
This is a coming together moment for the estranged friends who bond over their common fears. This obviously hits a nerve for Alicent and is probably the cause for her attempt at trying to push back the king's advances later on in the episode. However, Alicent can't decline the king's advances when a servant calls on her to tend to Viserys in his chambers. She is tired, the hour is late. Well, time to have a cup of coffee, love. No sympathy whatsoever from the maid. That's her duty, and she has no say about it. Her scene with Viserys is wonderfully contrasted with Rhaenyra's awakening and rejection. Whilst the life seems to drain away from Alicent's eyes as she lays there, Rhaenyra is taken to the depths of King's Landing to experience a pleasure house with good old Uncle Daemon. Daemon's motives are really interesting in this episode, and I'm trying to figure out if Mysaria, his partner in the first two episodes of the season, is in cahoots with him. If we take a closer look at Mysaria, she filled the role that Varys had in Game of Thrones. She has her little birds that find people's secrets and reports them to Otto. In this case, the boy who spotted Rhaenyra leaving the pleasure house, that same boy then tells Otto Hightower the information. However, we see the same little boy return to Mysaria and hand her some money. She is the white worm that Otto referred to, and she's been feeding him information for some time. Now, you can deduce that she was more than likely the one who told Otto Hightower of Daemon's line in the first episode, an heir for a day. The big question is whether Daemon is in on this or not. He is the one who pulls off Rhaenyra's hat and exposes her silver hair, making them a lot more recognizable. When watching the scenes through this lens and Daemon's pitch to Viserys later on, it definitely feels like a setup for Rhaenyra and Daemon's attempt at snatching power by marrying her. I'm just not 100% sure whose side Mysaria is on. Telling Otto had a great outcome for Daemon. It eventually removed him from his place of power and out of the equation. It also got Daemon the boot again, but he doesn't seem to give a damn and would appreciate it if someone would give him a pillow and a blanket so he could sleep this off in the Great Hall. The dramatic irony of it all is that Rhaenyra is bemoaning the fact that men only wanted her for one thing.
They only want my name in my Valyrian blood for their offspring.
This is exactly what Daemon had in mind.
I want Rhaenyra. I'll take her as she is and wed her in the tradition of our house.
You're already wed.
That didn't stop Aegon the Conqueror from taking a second wife.
She has a blind spot for him, and her future going forward is going to be important on how she handles this and if she recognizes it. Viserys could have told her about his conversation with Daemon in the throne room, but elected not to explain any further details. Daemon's able to manipulate her, and in their first scene together in episode 1, there is clearly a tension and chemistry between them. You would definitely have to describe the relationship as grooming though. Just look at how she treasures the necklace Daemon gave her and how she comes to life when realizing he's returned to King's Landing. I don't think we as an audience have seen her smile like this for a long time. Daemon's impotence in the bedroom continues though as the tables turn on him in the pleasure house. He thought he was in control of the situation, but Rhaenyra is clearly game for some fun, and this takes the wind out of Daemon's sails and he's hit with a bout of brewer's droop. I'm not sure if this was a mixture of losing control or if he felt he was doing something wrong and taking advantage of Rhaenyra, but that's Daemon for you, a complex character who likes to fuck with people, both physically and metaphorically. Just as important as the sex was the aftermath of it all. Although Rhaenyra is rejected by Daemon, the dragon inside of her is fully awake and she takes Kristen Cole to bed. I bet Cole was absolutely bricking it throughout this entire sequence. I was dreading that when Rhaenyra was speaking to him later on that Viserys was going to walk through the door. I was so tense. But again, just the contrast, the way she had sex compared to Alicent. She's an active participant doing it for her own desire and pleasures. Otto, armed with the knowledge about Rhaenyra and Daemon's visit to the pleasure house, is probably one of, if not the most awkward conversations with Viserys we'll ever see. Whatever Otto was selling, Viserys wasn't buying it, and he was going to have him spell everything out. No ambiguity, no tiptoeing around it. Say it how it is.
What must I say it, Your Grace?
You enter my bedchamber, accusing my daughter of something. Now speak it. Plainly.
Rhaenyra and Alicent have one final conversation, and it's interesting to see how important Alicent finds the idea of Rhaenyra's virtue staying intact. She clearly lives an unhappy life, but instead of trying to break that cycle, she'll still abide by it. And if she has to abide by those rules, then so shall Rhaenyra. Daemon, on the other hand, doesn't see the importance of Rhaenyra's virtue. It's interesting because the topic of Rhaenyra's gender is brought up so often, but in reality, she should be the most powerful person, not man, not woman, but person in Westeros.
The princess has a dragon, you dumb cunt.
Dragon!
But she's still in such a weird predicament because of her gender and what's expected of her because of it. Viserys still seems to take Daemon's word over Rhaenyra's and has his maester brew some moon tea for the princess. Gotta have a plan B, yeah? Anyway, there's so much greatness in this episode. I think it's personally my favourite of the season so far. The drama was absolutely on point, and we've not even spoke about many of the things that have happened in this episode. I loved getting another glimpse of the underbelly of King's Landing. It was great to see how the common folk busied themselves, the fact that Rhaenyra will be married off to Valerion. I do love Lionel Strong though. This guy knows when people are speaking bullshit. Just look at his face right here. He'd make a great replacement for Otto. I, however, am not fully sold on the dagger malarkey, because we ultimately know what happens with the Night King. This just doesn't do it for me. Yeah, ironic all this prophecy and pain, and it's actually not important. Whatever. I want to say thank you for making it this far into the episode. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings. I noticed the last review did some big numbers for me, and I gained a few subscribers, so I'm glad you're here. For the rest of you, why don't you join the club and hit that subscribe button too? Thanks for watching.